Chairman of GOPAC and Kevin Walling, former Biden campaign surrogate. We want to talk about Ron DeSantis and his campaign last night. Karine Jean-Pierre talked about that just a moment ago. But first of all, this debt ceiling crisis, there's going to have to be a compromise. But can Biden sell it to progressives, and can McCarthy sell it to the House Freedom Caucus?
Well, that's anyone's guess, and we need to see what that final package looks like. There's indications that we may have some kind of deal as early as tomorrow, which then would be in place by Wednesday's default deadline. But listen, you have really good people on both sides of this negotiations team. Garrett Graves, representative on the Republican side from Louisiana. Shalonda Young, our OMB director, Steve Ricchetti. So you have really thoughtful people as part of this process. I'm hoping that the extremes in both parties don't kind of torpedo this effort. You saw Ronna McDaniel, for example, chair of the Republican Party, actually within the last 24 hours say this bodes well if we default for the Republican candidates for president. That has to be fundamentally put down. Any thought of that? You saw the press secretary, you saw Mitch McConnell, you saw the speaker even say default is not an option, and we need to make sure we drive home that message. It does not bode well for Republicans or Democrats. It would be a disaster and a pox on both parties if that happens.
Yeah, well, the new Fox News poll did find that the plurality of Americans would blame the president if we went into default. I mentioned the House Freedom Caucus. It's only fair that I say what it is they're demanding. They want to add to the Limit, Save, Grow Act measures on border security. They also want to cut funding for the new FBI headquarters. They want Janet Yellen to show her math about X date being June 1st. And then they want to speed up the recessions in COVID and the IRS in order to push the X date back to the end of June. So already, and the way that the Freedom Caucus cast it was, Speaker McCarthy, you're responsible for the unity in the Republican Party. If you want to keep it, here's what you need to do. So
those are reasonable for many Americans. Those are reasonable requests. I mean, being politically for the
thrown
speaker.
in at the 11th hour, though.
That's a good point.
Negotiations happen all the time, John. I mean, we don't think that progressives aren't throwing things in for the president now to try to negotiate. They are. Let's keep in mind, though, the big picture. Politically, Joe Biden must have a deal. I mean, you're now looking at only 33% of Americans think he is up for doing the job of President of the United States. He must have a deal. And we can talk about the Freedom Caucus and we can talk about progressives, but you know who he really needs? He needs Joe Manchin, which is why what is in this negotiation, the debt or the mining reforms so that there can be more oil and coal drilling. He needs Joe Manchin more than any other Democrat in the Senate.
Yeah, and with Manchin now facing a huge competitor for his Senate seat, he's not about to give up on some of the things that he truly believes in. Let's go to Ron DeSantis. And Karine Jean-Pierre stole my line. I was going to say that if this was put on by SpaceX instead of Twitter, it would have been a rapid, unscheduled disassembly. I mean, I would have thought that DeSantis would have wanted an epic launch, not this Twitter flop that happened last night.
Yeah, John, optics are everything. You don't get a redo for any kind of announcement like this. I think in the short term, we're all talking about this. Governor DeSantis heads to Iowa, South Carolina, New Hampshire next week for a 4-day swing. I think that obviously will be the talk of the town up there. People move on pretty quickly. But again, I think you're seeing Trump, other Republican contenders, the president even getting in on the joke last night on Twitter in terms of DeSantis' failure to launch yesterday. And I think that's, that speaks volumes. And, President Trump is now leading Ron DeSantis by 33 points in the most recent poll, by 40 points in the state of Iowa.
37 in the Real Clear Politics average.
33 in our Fox polling. He's leading by 40 points in Iowa, the must-win critical first state. Trump is up 10 points since February. DeSantis is down 9 points. He's got to flip that script, and we'll see if he does it on the ground next week in those states.
His inauguration was bested only by the coronation of King Charles. Why would you launch your presidential campaign like this?
Let's not forget, the only thing that matters is winning. And the amount of attention he is getting so early says that
I don't know if it's the right kind of attention, though, David.
Guys, this is the most insider of insider conversations. Folks in Iowa and South Carolina and New Hampshire
right.
Exactly, but we're not the ones who get to cast the votes, who actually get to pick our nominee. And as this discussion continues and DeSantis gets to talk about the success he's had in Florida, he's going to remain a contender, at least for a while.
All right. Well, SpaceX has learned a lot from blowing up rockets.
That's right. That's what they say.
Maybe DeSantis will as well. Gentlemen, thank you. Good to see you.
Thanks, John.